A popular slogan says the goal is to live with no regrets. It has the shape of wisdom and the substance of a bluff. To carry none, a person would have had to want nothing badly enough to mourn its loss, risk nothing that could cost them, and love no one in a way that left a mark. Regret is the receipt for having been awake while you were here. A person who feels none has either lived very carefully or is not being straight about it. To feel regret, the mind has to build a world that does not exist and then judge the real one against it. This is counterfactual thinking, and it sits at the root of the whole experience. When you say, "If only I had left 10 minutes earlier," you construct an alternate timeline in detail, place a better version of yourself inside it, and measure the distance between that life and the one you have. Regret is the charge that fills the gap. Kahneman and Tversky found the rule that governs which alternatives the mind builds. It does not generate them at random. It reaches first for whatever was unusual, whatever broke from the normal script, and rewrites that. Two people injured in identical accidents at the same intersection will not suffer equally. The one who took an unfamiliar shortcut that day torments himself far more than the one on his usual commute, because the unusual choice is easy to erase in the mind and the routine one is not. Blame lands on the deviation almost every time and skips over the 100 things done out of habit. This is why a small departure from routine can generate self-blame out of all proportion to itself.
Mr. General, she jeje. Any to lowo lowo lowo. If you no get, you go see Pepe. Me I dey low key, cause I get OT. Koluwa jo fere sọ̀rọ̀ mi, I go get money to show for me. Koluwa jo fere sọ̀rọ̀ mi. Ototo shala wa isha. Carry your own and no get stamina. Jo ma fe jo pa mi na. Ototo shala wa isha. Carry your own and no get stamina. Jo ma fe jo pa mi na.
There are two directions the counterfactual can run, and Roese mapped them. An upward counterfactual imagines how things could have gone better, and it is the engine of regret. It stings precisely because it holds up a brighter version of events. A downward counterfactual imagines how things could have gone worse, and it consoles. It is the thought that you could have been hurt far more badly, that the loss could have been total. The two serve different masters. Downward thinking makes you feel better and changes nothing. Upward thinking makes you feel worse and quietly prepares you to do better next time, because in spelling out exactly how the outcome could have improved, it hands you the instructions. Regret hurts, in other words, because it is busy teaching, and the lesson and the pain arrive in the same envelope. A strange piece of evidence shows how completely the comparison, rather than the result, drives the feeling. When researchers studied Olympic medalists, they found that bronze medalists often looked happier than silver medalists, even though silver is the better result. The silver medalist compares upward to the gold he just missed and tastes regret. Regret turns the blame inward because it always carries the suspicion that the fault traces back to you. Hold on to that suspicion because much of what follows interrogates it. A large share of human misery is a contest lost to a version of events that never had a real chance of happening. Regret is not a malfunction or a weakness of character, it is a specialized piece of equipment, and we know this because we can watch what happens to people who lose it. In a well-known study, neuroscientists tested patients with damage to the orbitofrontal cortex, a region just behind the eyes that integrates emotion with decision-making. The patients played a gambling task in which they could see not only what they had won, but what they would have won had they chosen the other option. Healthy people, shown the better foregone outcome, feel the pang of regret and adjust their later choices to avoid it. The patients with orbitofrontal damage felt nothing of the kind. They registered the result in front of them and remained blank about the road not taken, and as a result, they failed to learn, repeating choices that a regretful person would have corrected. That is the whole case for regret in a single experiment. The feeling exists because it improves the next decision. It is the emotional tag the brain attaches to a choice that turned out worse than an available alternative, and the tag is what makes us steer differently in the future.
You asked me what my biggest regret is, and I'd have to say that my biggest regret is not doing more and being a better person on the day one of my mother figures, my Auntie Jen, passed away. I have a tendency to be short and cold sometimes when I feel like things aren't going my way. And so about a year back, we were supposed to go and see a movie that I invited her to come and see with me. And we were already running late. We were behind. We left late. And I was very upset, and it was clear on my face and clear in my tone that I was very disappointed, and I was being very cold and short. And the entire time before we left, she was just like, "Oh man, I wish we could have gotten there earlier. This is just so upsetting," like trying to be on my side and show me that, she's supporting me in a way that she could. And on the way there, she's playing music by my favorite artist and saying, "Oh, I know you'll like this song. Let me play this song for you. I know this is one of your favorite songs." And the entire time, she's just exuding immeasurable kindness in a way that they would write about in books. And the whole way there, I'm just being cold and short and dismissive. Okay. Yeah, this one's fine. And we get there, and she's still her bright, warm, and happy self. And she's like, okay, give me a moment. I'm having a little trouble with these stairs. And so I go behind and I try to make sure she's okay, still a little upset at the same time. And we get into the theater, and she gets halfway up the stairs to our seat, and she starts saying, I'm having a little trouble breathing, nephew. I don't know what's wrong. So I take her hand, still upset, because I just want to see the movie. I really wanted to see the movie, and not really thinking of anyone but myself. And so we get up the stairs to our seats, and she tells me, nephew, I can't breathe. And I'm like, Auntie, you're okay. Like, what's wrong? And I patted her back and gave her inhaler. And she said, no, nephew, I really can't breathe. And so I run and I go out and I tell the staff member and I say, hey, my auntie's in there. She can't breathe. She's not doing okay. And I just sit out there while she's in there, just struggling to breathe. And I think about that day repeatedly, because I remember in the hospital when they came to me and told me that she didn't make it. And I just keep thinking about how I treated her on that day, and how I could have been better, and I could have done more, and maybe she would still be here. She was like a mother to me. And I regret not doing more and not having her around. And it feels like it's my fault, because I was the only one there. And I should have done more. But I know she would want me. She would want me to not think that way. And she would tell me that it's not my fault, and that she loves me no matter what, and she knew that I was upset, and she doesn't blame it on me. But that doesn't change the fact that she's still not here. And it doesn't change the fact that I was cold and hurtful on that day. And I don't know if that's something I'll ever be able to get over, because I can't say I'm sorry to her. That's it. I'm sorry.
To keep ourselves in, we'll live on forever on the corner of oblivion. Visit Lily at the ice cream shop. Rescue her from work. Olive's in school, she's Danny's age. Someday they'll graduate, but until then I'll wait. Let's all make a plan to find each other when the world ends. Meet up at the IHOP on Cause with the gravity holding us down to the ground, and we'll listen to the sound of oblivion.
You mean look at me?
Make up words, make up letters. Make it worse, make it better again and again. And we'll live on forever on the corner of oblivion. On the corner of oblivion. On the corner of oblivion.
Strip out the capacity for regret, and you do not get a serene, liberated decision maker. You get someone who keeps walking into the same wall, because the wall stopped hurting. The developmental evidence tells the same story from the other end. Very young children do not appear to feel regret at all. A 4-year-old who picks the wrong box and misses a prize is disappointed, but show him that the other box held the better prize, and his mood does not reliably worsen because the machinery for comparing his real outcome to a counterfactual one has not yet come online. Somewhere around the age of 6 or 7, that machinery switches on, and children begin to respond to what could have been, not merely to what is. The arrival of regret is a milestone in the growth of the mind, a sign that a child has become able to hold a real outcome and an imagined better one side by side and feel the difference. It is the same cognitive achievement that makes learning from mistakes possible, which is why it shows up on the same developmental timetable. All of this should change how you hear the feeling when it comes. The ache is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is a faculty doing its job, a sophisticated system flagging a gap between what happened and what might have, so that the organism carrying it can do better. The trouble is never that we feel regret. The trouble begins when a tool built to fire once, deliver its correction, and fall silent instead fires 1,000 times over a correction we have long since received. Understanding the tool is the first step towards switching it off when its work is done. What we actually regret: inaction and the unlived self. Ask people what they regret, and a consistent pattern appears. In the short term, Gilovich and Medvec found, we regret our actions. The clumsy thing said at the party stings tonight. Across a whole life, the pattern reverses, and the deepest, most durable regrets are almost always failures to act. The chance not taken, the word not said, the person not become. The reason is structural. A regretted action is finished. It happened, it had consequences, and consequences resolve into something you can carry. A regretted inaction never closes, because you never tried. No result ever arrived to cap the fantasy, so the imagination is free to award the unchosen path any reward it likes, forever, with nothing real to argue it down. The job turned down becomes the career you were meant for. The person never approached becomes the great love. Action leaves a wound that scars. Inaction leaves a question with no bottom. Davidai and Gilovich located the sharpest version of this. Our worst regrets are usually not about failing our duties, but about failing our hopes. There is the self we feel we ought to be, the responsible one who pays the bills and keeps promises, and the self we wish to become, the bolder and freer one. We forgive ourselves for dropped duties fairly quickly. We do not forgive abandoned aspirations, and so we grieve most for a person we never actually were. Jung explained where that person goes. Every choice to become one thing is a choice not to become 1,000 others, and those unlived selves do not vanish. they sink into what he called the shadow and exert a pull from there. Much of what we name regret is the pressure of a life we did not live, still active in the unconscious, asking for some expression before it is too late. This is why the boldness regrets endure. Each unchosen path corresponds to an unlived self that never got its say. The aim is not to chase every abandoned possibility which would tear a life apart, but to stop pretending those possibilities were never real, because the pretense is exactly what gives them their power to haunt. One more finding carries a practical use. When Roese and Somerville ask people for their single greatest regret, the top answer was not love or money, but education, because school still feels like a door that could be reopened. We feel regret most sharply where we believe the opportunity is still alive and the path still available. A door that has truly closed produces grief, which time turns into acceptance. A door that might still be open produces the restless ache that regret specializes in. So a large part of handling a regret is the plain question of whether its door is actually open. If it is, act. If it is not, mourn it and turn around. Regret as the engine of choice. Regret does not only judge the past, it reaches forward and shapes decisions before we make them, often more powerfully than logic does, and economists had to rebuild their models to account for it. The classical theory of choice assumed people simply weigh the odds and payoffs of each option and pick the one with the best expected value. That theory kept failing to predict real behavior until two researchers, Bell and the pair of Loomes and Sugden, independently proposed what came to be called regret theory. The idea is that when we choose, we are not only estimating outcomes, we are estimating how we will feel comparing our outcome to the one we passed up. We will pay a real price, accept a worse expected result, to avoid the specific anguish of having chosen wrong while a better option sat in plain view. You can see this anticipated regret steering ordinary decisions everywhere once you know its shape. It is why people buy insurance they will probably never need and decline bets they would mathematically be wise to take. It is why a person hesitates to switch from the line they are standing in, even when the other line is plainly moving faster, because changing and then watching their original line speed ahead would feel far worse than staying put and losing the same minutes. The pain of a bad outcome you caused by acting is sharper than the pain of the same outcome that befell you while you sat still. This asymmetry produces a documented bias toward inaction, sometimes called omission bias and sometimes the status quo bias. Given two paths to the same bad result, one through doing and one through not doing, most people will choose not doing, because harm that follows from action feels more like their fault and stings more in advance. The default option, the thing that happens if we do nothing, carries a quiet advantage in almost every decision, and a large part of that advantage is simply that we are protecting ourselves from anticipated regret. We would rather be hurt by the world than by our own hand. The same machinery has a famous cost in the stock market, where it is called the disposition effect. Investors tend to sell their winning stocks too early and hold their losing stocks far too long, which is the opposite of what a cool calculation would recommend. The reason is regret. Selling a loser means converting a paper loss into a realized one, a confessed mistake you can no longer pretend will turn around, and the dread of that admission keeps people clutching failing investments long past the point of sense. Selling a winner, by contrast, locks in a small triumph and protects it from any future reversal. In both cases, the person is managing not their money, but their anticipated regret, and it costs them dearly. There is a lesson buried in all of this that runs against the grain of the chapter on inaction. The same instinct that makes us mourn our failures to act in the long run makes us terrified of acting in the short run. The feeling that will, decades from now, punish you most for the chances you did not take is the very same feeling that today whispers that the safe move is to do nothing. To decide well, you have to recognize that anticipated regret systematically overweights the risk of acting and underweights the slow, compounding cost of standing still, knowing the bias does not erase it, but it lets you correct for it. The way a sailor corrects for a current he cannot stop. Why much regret is built on a lie. Everything regret does depends on the better choice having actually been available. Often it was not. It only looks available now, from a vantage point flooded with information you did not have when it mattered. The chief culprit is hindsight bias. Once you know how something turned out, you cannot reconstruct the genuine uncertainty you stood in beforehand, and a choice that was reasonable on the information you had becomes, in retrospect, an obvious blunder, graded against facts that did not exist yet. When you tell yourself you should have known, test the claim, because the answer is usually that you could not have, and the feeling that you should have is your memory misreporting what it actually held at the time. The past felt like an open question while you were living it. Only afterward does it harden into something that looks like it could only have gone one way, and that hardening is an illusion stamped on by the outcome. A second source is the habit Schwartz called maximizing. Maximizers try to find the single best option and cannot rest until they are sure they have it. Satisficers find something good enough and commit. Maximizers land marginally better outcomes by some measures and are reliably less happy because a mind that always measures its choice against the perfect alternative lives in the shadow of a phantom no real outcome can satisfy. Much of what feels like regret is not a response to a bad result, but a comparison habit that no result could ever quiet. A third source is the error Gilbert and Wilson documented in effective forecasting. We are poor at predicting our own feelings and routinely overestimate how hard and how long an outcome will hurt. The promotion lost, the relationship ended, the chance missed, all tend to wound less and for less time than we expected, because the mind adapts in ways we fail to credit in advance. This matters because regret runs on the premise that the unchosen life would have made us lastingly happier, and the evidence gives real reason to doubt it. There is also a quieter distortion at work. Whenever we picture the road not taken, we imagine it as a finished, sunny, still life, forgetting that it too would have unfolded in real time, accumulating its own accidents, betrayals, and dull stretches. The unchosen path is always rendered as a postcard, never as a life. I will not overstate the point, since the research is contested and some roads not taken truly were better. But the burden of proof sits with the fantasy, and the fantasy rarely meets it. Put these together, and much regret turns out to be a contest against a ghost, a self-blamed for not knowing the unknowable, a choice measured against an option that was never there, a rejected life imagined as permanent happiness that would in fact have settled into something ordinary. Seeing this does not excuse real mistakes. It stops you from being tormented by mistakes that were never mistakes.
He perdido muchas cosas que pensé que eran pa' mí. He llorado en silencio sin que nadie sepa aquí. Pero no guardo coraje ni me quiero abandonar. Mientras tenga vida dentro, Dios me va a levantar. lo sé, aunque hoy me mire abajo, mañana estaré de pie. Dios me va a levantar, no me voy a derrotar. La tristeza viene y pasa, pero Dios se queda acá. Que llueva lo que llueva, que venga lo que vendrá. Si Dios camina conmigo, nada me va a faltar. Dios me va a levantar, yo lo sé, aunque hoy me mire abajo, mañana estaré de pie. Dios me va a levantar, no me voy a derrotar. La tristeza viene y pasa, pero Dios se queda acá. Paso a paso voy andando, sin dejar de confiar. Aunque me tarde un poquito, Dios me va a levantar.
Rumination versus reflection. There are two ways of revisiting the past, and a person's whole relationship to regret turns on which one they practice. Nolan Hoeksema spent her career distinguishing them. Reflection examines the past to learn from it and has a destination. Rumination circles the same painful spot without arriving anywhere, wearing the groove deeper each lap. The difference is not how long you think, but whether the thinking is going somewhere. Rumination is dangerous because it feels like work. The mind believes it is solving something while it is only rehearsing the pain and producing nothing new. The 100th replay of a regret is no wiser than the third. Only more practiced at suffering, and chronic rumination tracks closely with depression. Ordinarily, the sting of a bad memory fades faster over the years than the glow of a good one, a quirk that memory researchers call the fading affect bias, which leaves us on balance gentler toward our own pasts than we expect to be. Rumination is the thing that jams that mechanism, holding a single regret raw and current long after it should have dulled, so that the brooder is denied even the ordinary mercy of forgetting. Whatever lesson the episode held was usually available by the second or third honest pass. Everything after that is motion mistaken for progress. Buddhism named this with the image of two arrows. The first arrow is the painful event itself, the loss, the failure, the wrong turn. We cannot always avoid it. The second arrow is the one we fire ourselves into the same wound, the self-blame and replay we add on top. The first arrow is pain, the second is suffering, and the second is optional. Nearly the entire weight of chronic regret is second arrows, fired again and again into an injury that would otherwise have begun to heal. There is a practical trick that changes which of the two arrows you are firing, and it turns on the position you take while you remember. When most people revisit a painful scene, they relive it from inside their own eyes, feeling it again as if it were happening now, which pours fuel on the distress and deepens the rumination. Researchers studying what they call self-distancing found that asking people to replay the same memory from a step back, watching themselves in the scene from the outside as a calm observer would, sharply lowers the emotional charge and the urge to brood. The distanced viewer can ask why the thing happened and what it meant without being flooded by it, which is exactly the move that converts rumination into reflection. The content of the memory does not change. The vantage point does, and the vantage point is most of the battle. The task, then, is not to stop revisiting the past, but to know when reflection has finished and rumination has taken over. The test is whether your thinking is still generating anything new. If the 10th pass and the 50th reach the same place, you have stopped learning, and the rational move is to set the matter down, not because it did not matter, but because you have already taken everything from it that it had to give. Regret and the aging self. A life that handles regret well tends to follow a particular arc, and the research on aging shows it clearly. Younger people are surrounded by open doors, and so they regret almost everything that goes wrong, treating each failure as a problem still to be solved. As people age and certain doors close for good, the wise ones learn a different skill, which is not how to fix every regret, but how to let go of the ones that can no longer be fixed. Psychologists who study self-regulation across the lifespan, among them Roese and Heckhausen, found that the people who keep their well-being into old age are the ones who can disengage from goals that have become unreachable and stop pouring energy into regrets they can no longer act on. This is not the same as giving up, and the distinction is the entire point. The research draws a sharp line between regrets attached to situations a person can still influence and regrets attached to situations that are sealed. Where the door is still open, continued engagement pays. The right response to a fixable regret is effort, not acceptance. Where the door has shut, the same engagement becomes a trap. And the people who thrive are the ones who can release the unreachable goal, redirect their attention to what remains possible, and protect themselves with the downward comparison that says it could have been worse. The skill that separates a bitter old age from a contented one is the accuracy with which a person tells the two kinds of regret apart and matches the right response to each. This is the empirical echo of a much older intuition that wisdom lies in knowing the difference between what can be changed and what cannot, and the laboratory has now put numbers behind it. Older adults who cling to regrets over things they can no longer alter show higher levels of distress and even poorer physical health markers, while those who can disengage from the unchangeable maintain better mood and sharper purpose. The body, it turns out, keeps a tab on the regrets we refuse to put down. What the lifespan view adds to everything else is a sense of timing. The same regret that demands action at 30 may demand release at 70, not because its content changed, but because the world around it closed. Reading a regret correctly therefore means reading the clock as well, asking not only whether the door is open in principle, but whether it is open to you now, given the life you actually have left to live. A regret you could once have answered with effort, you may now have to answer with peace, and recognizing the moment that responsibility passes from one to the other is among the quieter arts of growing up. What philosophy offers: control, time, and fate. The oldest counsel on regret comes from the Stoics and starts with one distinction. Epictetus, who had been enslaved and knew how much of a life lies outside one's hands, opened his handbook by dividing the world in two. What is up to us and what is not? Up to us are our judgments, our intentions, and our chosen actions. Not up to us are our bodies, our reputations, the behavior of others, and the outcomes of our actions once they leave our hands. Stoic peace comes from investing concern only in the first category and releasing the second. Applied to regret, this dissolves a great deal of it, because we regret outcomes far more than choices, and outcomes are mostly not up to us. You decide as well as your knowledge and character allow, and then the world mixes your action with luck and other people's choices into a result you could never have guaranteed. Your responsibility ends at the border of your control. You answer for the quality of your choosing. You do not answer for the verdict reality returned, because that verdict was never yours to issue. To regret an outcome you did not control is to pay a debt you do not owe. The Stoics give only half the picture. Kierkegaard supplies the rest in one sentence. Life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward. Understanding needs distance and completion. We make sense of a chapter only once it is finished. Living grants no such luxury because we choose facing forward into the fog with our backs to the only direction clarity comes from. By the time we understand a moment well enough to handle it correctly, it is already behind us. This is the deepest root of regret, deeper than any bias, because it is not an error we could train away. It is the shape of being a creature that moves through time one way and understands it the other. It also means the self who made the painful choice was not a fool, but someone deciding without the answer key and deserves gratitude rather than contempt, since those imperfect choices are why you now hold the wisdom you would use to condemn them. Kierkegaard had a further idea that points directly at the cure, one he called repetition. Where recollection moves backward, trying to recover and relive what is gone, repetition moves forward, carrying what mattered into a future that has not happened yet. The person stuck in regret is locked in pure recollection, forever reaching back toward a fixed point. The person who has healed has performed a repetition, taking the meaning of the past and recreating it ahead of himself, in a new form, in a life still open. The same love, the same ambition, the same value can be lived again, but by carrying it forward into something new. To recollect is to face the closed door. To repeat is to turn around and build the thing the door was guarding somewhere else. Nietzsche pushed all of this furthest with the idea of eternal recurrence. Imagine being told you will live this exact life again, every detail in the same order, every pain and joy repeated forever with no edits. Would the news crush you, or would you welcome it? He meant the thought not as physics, but as a test of your relationship to your own existence. To rage against it, to long to rewrite the past, is to confess you have not yet learned to affirm your life. His answer was amor fati, the love of fate, which is not resignation, but active welcome, a refusal to wish anything otherwise, because the events of a life are knotted so tightly that you cannot remove the one you hate most without unraveling everything that grew from it, including the person you became. The Stoics teach you to release what you could not control. Kierkegaard shows you how to carry the past forward instead of reaching back into it. Nietzsche asks the hardest thing, which is to turn and affirm the whole road, scars included, as the only one that could have brought you here. Time's one-way door. Underneath every regret lies a single brute fact that no amount of cleverness can soften. The past is fixed, and the future is not. We can act on what is to come, and we are locked out of what has been. And this asymmetry, so obvious that we rarely look straight at it, is the hard floor the whole subject rests on. You can change everything ahead of you, and nothing behind you. Regret is what it feels like to push against the one immovable wall in human experience, the wall that separates us forever from the moment we wish we could re-enter. Philosophers have long puzzled over why time should run this way, why cause precedes effect, and the door of the past slams shut the instant we pass through it. Henri Bergson argued that we misunderstand the problem because we picture time as a line in space, a row of identical moments we could, in principle, walk back along. Lived time, what he called duration, is nothing like that. It is a continuous flow in which the past is not a place we left, but a weight we carry, accumulating inside us and colouring everything that follows. On this view, the past is not gone at all. It is gathered up in who we have become, present in every gesture, which is a stranger and more consoling thought than it first appears. You cannot return to the past because you are already made of it. The most useful thing anyone has said about living inside this asymmetry came from Hannah Arendt, who asked what a creature is supposed to do, given that its actions are irreversible. Once you have acted, you cannot take the action back. It is loosed into the world and goes on producing consequences you never intended and cannot recall. Arendt argued that human beings invented two faculties precisely to survive this condition. Against the unpredictability of the future, we have the power to make and keep promises, which lets us build islands of certainty in a world we cannot foresee. And against the irreversibility of the past, we have the power to forgive. Forgiveness, in her account, is the only thing that can release a person from the endless chain of consequence that a deed sets running. It does not change what was done, which is impossible, but it breaks the grip of the done thing on the present, freeing both the wronged and the wrongdoer to act anew rather than remain trapped forever in a single irreversible moment. This is the deepest answer to the helplessness at the center of regret. You are right that you cannot undo the past, and you have been right all along. The desire to reach back and edit it was never going to be satisfied, but irreversibility was never meant to be solved by reaching backward. It was meant to be answered by forgiveness, which works forward, releasing you from the consequence so that you can begin again. The past stays exactly as it was. What forgiveness changes is its authority over what comes next. To forgive a wrong done to you and to accept forgiveness for a wrong you did, including the strange necessary act of forgiving yourself, is the one human power that genuinely answers the irreversibility of time. It is not a way back through the door, it is the only way the door stops mattering.
St. John's River, come up slow. Take me where you wanna go. St. John's River, I'm gone, 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 gone. And I went easy, cypress knees and the moss hung low.
You held me down and wouldn't let go. Nobody watched me going under. Nobody had to know. Pull me down where the lights are gone. Hold me under, it won't be long. Your hands are cold, I let them be. I came here to stop being me. St. John's River, you don't run right. You carry me out of sight. St. John's River, I'm gone, 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 gone. And I'm not sorry. Give me back the boy I was before, the one who never locked the door. Lay me down where the water's deep and let me finally sleep. St. John's River, when we're through,
Take the part of me they knew.
St. John's River,
I'm gone, 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 gone.
If the Stoics teach us to release what lay outside our control, the existentialists turn and confront us with the staggering size of what lay inside it. Jean-Paul Sartre put the matter in a phrase that has never lost its sting. We are condemned to be free, condemned because we did not ask to exist and cannot escape the burden of choosing, free because once thrown into the world, we are the authors of who we become, with no fixed nature and no external script to take the responsibility off our hands. For Sartre, there is no human essence handed down in advance that makes us what we are. We make ourselves, choice by choice, and that fact is the root of both our dignity and our dread. Regret is one of the faces of that dread. If I am genuinely the author of my life, then my failures are genuinely mine, with no fate or circumstance standing by to absorb the blame, and that is a heavy thing to hold. Sartre noticed how desperately people flee from it into what he called bad faith, the elaborate lies we tell ourselves to pretend we had no choice, that we were only playing a role assigned to us, that our hands were tied. The man who says, "I had to," when he means, "I chose to," is in bad faith. He trades the anguish of his freedom for the comfort of a story in which he was never really free, and the trade costs him his authorship of his own life. Here, the confrontation turns quietly into a liberation, and the turn is the part that matters for regret. The same freedom that makes your past failures truly yours also means you are never finished, never reducible to what you have done so far. Because there is no fixed essence sealing your fate, no past choice can define you permanently unless you agree to let it. You remain, in every moment, free to choose differently from here. The point of fully owning your past mistakes is not to be crushed under them, but to reclaim the freedom that produced them and aim it forward. The man in bad faith says the past made him what he is, and so nothing can change. The man living honestly says the past was his doing, and so is everything still to come. Martin Heidegger deepened this with his analysis of what he called being toward death. Most of us, he argued, spend our days absorbed in distraction and conformity, doing what one does, wanting what one is supposed to want, living as an anonymous member of the crowd he named the they self. Authentic existence begins only when we grasp, not as an abstract fact, but in our bones, that our time is finite and entirely our own to spend. Far from being morbid, holding our mortality steadily in view clarifies everything, because it forces the question of whether the life we are actually living is the one we mean to live. Heidegger spoke of a call of conscience, a silent summons that calls us back from the crowd to our own most genuine possibilities. Regret, heard this way, is often that call arriving late, the voice of an authentic self informing us that we have been living someone else's life. The remedy is not to silence the voice, but to finally obey it, and to spend the time that remains as if it were ours, because it is. Camus and the absurd. Albert Camus began from a colder premise than any of the others. The universe, he held, is silent and indifferent, offering no meaning, no justice, and no answer to our demand that things make sense, while we go on demanding it anyway. He called the collision between our hunger for meaning and the world's refusal to supply it the absurd. Every regret is a small version of that collision, a demand that the past have gone differently, meeting a universe that will not rearrange itself to suit us. We want the irreversible to be reversible, the indifferent to be fair, and the answer that comes back is always silence. Camus thought there were only 3 honest responses to the absurd, and 2 of them are dead ends. The first is suicide, surrendering to the meaninglessness by quitting. The second, which he called philosophical suicide, is the leap into comforting illusion, pretending the universe holds a meaning it does not, telling yourself the loss was secretly part of some grand plan. The third response, the only one he could respect, is revolt, to look the meaninglessness full in the face and refuse to be defeated by it, to live fully and intensely precisely because nothing is guaranteed. The man in revolt does not pretend his suffering was justified and does not let it crush him. He holds both truths at once, that the loss was senseless and that he will go on living anyway with more appetite rather than less. His image for this is Sisyphus, the man condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill forever, only to watch it roll back down each time he nears the top, an eternity of labor that accomplishes nothing. It is a perfect picture of futility, and Camus does something startling with it. He asks us to imagine Sisyphus at the moment the rock rolls down and he must walk back to begin again as content. In that walk down the hill, conscious of his fate and superior to it because he has stopped expecting it to be otherwise, Sisyphus owns his absurd existence completely. He has nothing to regret because he has surrendered the demand that things be different, and in surrendering it, he becomes free. The closing line is one of the strangest in philosophy. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. For regret, the lesson is bracing rather than comforting, and that is its value. You will not get a reason for the wrong turn. The universe is not going to redeem your worst chapter by revealing its hidden purpose, and any story that promises it will is the leap into illusion Camus warned against. What you can do is the harder, cleaner thing. Accept that some of what you regret was simply senseless. Refuse to let the senselessness defeat you, and turn back to the life in front of you with your appetite intact. The freedom is not in being given a reason, it is in no longer needing one. Montaigne and the question of repentance. Among all the philosophers who circled regret, the most humane was Michel de Montaigne, who devoted an entire essay to asking, with disarming honesty, whether he repented of anything. His answer surprised even him. Looking back across his life, examining his errors with the same skeptical eye he turned on everything else, he found that he could hardly bring himself to wish he had acted differently, because the man who acted was the man he was, formed by the exact mixture of nature and circumstance that made him who he is. To wish the actions away was to wish himself away. This is not the smugness of a man who never erred. Montaigne admitted his faults freely. He simply refused to perform the theatre of repentance over them, the public anguish and breast-beating he saw all around him, and judged to be mostly vanity. Real change of conduct, he thought, was rare and quiet, while loud repentance was common and hollow, often just a way of feeling virtuous about a self one had no intention of altering. He distrusted the man who claimed to be transformed by remorse, because he had watched too many such men return unchanged to their old habits the moment the feeling passed. What he respected instead was the steady, undramatic work of knowing yourself and living within the grain of your own character rather than at war with it. There is a deep acceptance in this that the other thinkers approach by harder roads. Montaigne arrives at peace with his past not by reframing it or affirming it as fate or forgiving it in any formal sense, but simply by recognizing that he is one particular person who lived one particular life, and that the regrets he might rehearse are mostly demands that he had been someone else. He would rather understand the person he is than condemn him for not being a person he never was. There is a limit, he is saying, to how much of yourself you can honestly wish undone before you are no longer wishing about your own life at all, but about a stranger's. The caution worth taking from him is against the performance of regret, which is so easily mistaken for the real thing. Loud self-reproach can be a substitute for change rather than a path to it, a way of paying for a fault in the currency of suffering, so that you never have to pay in the harder currency of becoming different. Montaigne would have us spend less effort on the spectacle of remorse and more on the patient, unglamorous business of knowing our own nature and steering it gently toward the good. The test of regret is never how badly it makes you feel. It is whether anything in you actually changes, and the two are far more loosely connected than we like to believe. The regret worth keeping. It is tempting to conclude that the goal is to dissolve regret entirely, but that is a mistake, and Bernard Williams is the one who keeps it honest. Some regret is appropriate, even a form of decency, and a person who has burned all of it away has lost something worth having. Williams's case is a lorry driver who, through no fault of his own, kills a child that runs into the road. He was attentive and within every rule. He is blameless, yet we would be disturbed by a driver who felt only what a bystander feels, a general sorrow, and then drove on unchanged. There is resultant luck in how our actions happen to turn out, so that the drunk driver who reaches home is a fool, while the one who hits a child is a monster, though their choices were identical. There is circumstantial luck in the situations we happen to face, so that a man who would have collaborated with a tyranny is merely lucky never to have been tested by one. and there is constitutive luck in the temperament and character we were dealt without choosing, the courage or cowardice, the patience or temper that we did not select but are held to account for anyway. Almost everything we praise and blame, Nagel showed, is shot through with luck we did not control, which means the clean line we want to draw between what is our fault and what is not was never as clean as we pretend. This complicates regret in a way that is worth sitting with rather than resolving too quickly. Some of what you regret was resultant luck, a sound choice that the dice turned bad, and that regret you can release because the fault was the world's and not yours, but the lesson does not run only one way. The same logic that excuses you for outcomes you did not control should make you slower to congratulate yourself for the lucky ones and humbler toward the people whose worse luck you escaped. Aristotle, long before any of this, set out the conditions under which a person is genuinely responsible at all. An act is fully ours only when we did it knowingly and without compulsion, when we understood what we were doing and were free to do otherwise. Where ignorance was unavoidable or force was real, the act was not fully voluntary, and neither praise nor blame, neither pride nor regret properly attaches to it. So, the mature position is not the absence of regret, but the ability to tell the kinds apart. There is the regret built on cognitive error and bad luck, the kind that punishes a past self for failing to read the future, and that one you release, because releasing it is accurate. And there is the regret that points at a real wrong you did knowingly and freely, a cruelty you chose, a person you failed when you could have done otherwise. That one is not a malfunction to be reframed, it is conscience doing its job, and the right response is not stoic distance, but to let it deepen your care and, where you still can, to repair the wrong. A person who has actually wronged someone should not reach for a meditation on impermanence, he should reach for the phone. A life with no regret at all is usually not a life that rose above the feeling. More often, it is one that never risked, or told the truth, or loved anyone enough to run up the bill. Fear is regret pointed forward. Regret and fear seem to face opposite directions, but a great deal of fear is regret thrown forward in time, the dread of a regret you have not earned yet. What holds you back at the edge of a risk is rarely the danger itself. It is the picture of a future self looking back and wishing you had chosen differently. The earlier chapters showed how this anticipated regret quietly governs our economic choices. Here it matters for something larger, which is courage, because the same instinct that protects a portfolio can stunt a whole life. The trick is that the research on regret doubles as a guide to the decisions that produce it. The central finding that across a whole life we regret inactions far more than actions is not only a description of the past, but a usable forecast about the future. When you feel the fear of acting rise, you can recall which way the long arithmetic runs, and it runs overwhelmingly toward having tried. The fear is loud now, in the present tense, but the version of you who casts the deciding vote is the one looking back from the end, and that one will almost always wish you had been braver than you felt. Used carelessly, anticipated regret turns from a compass into a cage. The fear of choosing wrong can swell until a person chooses nothing, not noticing that refusing to choose is itself a choice, and reliably the one that ages worst. Paralysis disguises itself as prudence, but it is only inaction wearing a respectable coat, and inaction is precisely what the long arc of regret punishes hardest, because it leaves behind the unanswerable question rather than the survivable answer. So the right use of the feeling is to consult it deliberately rather than obey it blindly. Before a decision, summon the wisest version of your future self, the one who already knows how regret behaves, and ask which way she would have wanted you to move. She knows that a failed attempt heals into a story you can tell, while a refused chance hardens into a question you cannot stop asking. She knows that the sting of a foolish action fades, while the chill of cowardice compounds with interest. Fear says, protect yourself from the pain of failing. Everything we have learned says the deeper and longer pain is almost always the one that comes from never having dared at all. Who regrets identity and self-forgiveness? A question hides inside every regret. Who exactly is doing the regretting and who is being punished? We speak as if one unchanging self committed the error and now judges it, the same person on both sides. A closer look at identity over time loosens that. Derek Parfit argued that personal identity across the years is far thinner than we assume. What connects you to your younger self is not an unchanging essence, but a chain of overlapping psychological links, memories and beliefs and intentions held together by continuity rather than sameness. And the further back you reach, the weaker the connection grows. Buddhism reached a more radical version of the same idea centuries earlier in the teaching of non-self. There is no solid person at the center, only a flowing succession of states we treat as one continuous thing. The person who made the painful choice shared your name and a thread of memory, but in a strict sense was not the self now suffering over it. This is not a loophole for evading responsibility, but something gentler, the particular cruelty of regret, where a fixed present self punishes a fixed past self forever for a perfectly remembered crime, rests on a picture of personhood that does not survive scrutiny. You are not quite the one who made the choice, and you do not even remember it accurately, because as Kahneman showed in the gap between the experiencing self that lives a moment and the remembering self that files it away, the remembering self is a careless editor that trims and recolors the record to fit your present mood. This bears directly on self-forgiveness and on the stubborn belief that being hard on ourselves is what keeps us good. The evidence runs the other way. Christine Neff's work on self-compassion shows that treating yourself with the kindness you would offer a struggling friend does not breed laziness. It breeds resilience, candor about failure, and a far greater likelihood of changing. She is careful to distinguish this from self-esteem, which depends on judging yourself favorably and therefore collapses precisely when you fail and need it most. Self-compassion asks for no such verdict. It holds steady in failure because it is rooted not in being good, but in being human, in the recognition that error and limitation are the common inheritance of everyone alive. Harsh self-criticism, by contrast, floods a person with shame, and shame makes us hide from the very failure we mean to fix, while compassion lowers the threat enough that we can look at it and try again. Spinoza reached the same conclusion by reason 3 centuries ago. The one who repents what he has done is twice wretched, weakened first by the deed, and then by the self-punishment piled on top of it. Real self-forgiveness is not pretending the wrong did not happen. It holds the failure in full view, takes its lesson, and then sets down the self-punishment, on the understanding that endless suffering adds nothing and disables the better future the lesson was for. Take the lesson, drop the lash. The self who erred was doing its flawed best with what it had, and is owed the same mercy you would extend without hesitation to anyone else caught in the same bind. The story you tell, narrative and growth. We do not store our pasts as neutral footage, but as stories, and the story you tell about a regret can shape a life more than the event did. Dan McAdams showed that people build their identities as narratives, threading scattered episodes into a tale with themes and turning points. The events are fixed, the story is not, and the same painful chapter can be told in opposite ways.
And the birds don't pop. birds don't talk like the ones on screen. Have they really domesticated me?
McAdams found that one narrative shape, which he called redemption, strongly predicts well-being. In a redemptive story, the hard chapter is told as the necessary prelude to something good, the suffering reframed as the ground that later growth grew out of. People who narrate their pain this way come out sturdier and more at peace. People who tell the opposite story, a contamination story in which good things are spoiled by what came after, fare worse across nearly every measure. And this is partly a skill and partly a choice, because the story is being authored as you go, and the author has more freedom than he usually takes. The research on post-traumatic growth is relevant here, and it is real but easily oversold. Many people who endure serious adversity do emerge changed for the better, with a deeper appreciation for life and a steadier sense of their own strength. But some of what gets reported is true transformation, and some is the mind awarding itself a medal it never earned. The field is still arguing over the ratio, and it would be dishonest to promise that suffering reliably improves people, because often it simply hurts them.
Think I forgot a couple things. My brain is still at home, home's far away. I really thought that life was one big race, but now I know it's one big chase. You can still win, just gotta be faster. You can when you can still win, just gotta be faster. You can when you can still win, just gotta be faster. You can when you can still win, just gotta be faster. You can when you can still win, just gotta be faster. You can when you can still win, just gotta be. I had it good, and yet I left and can't retrace my steps. Think I forgot a couple things, my brain is still at home, home's far away. I really thought that life was one big race, but now I know it's one big chase. You're gonna be eaten by a coyote, run little one, though the pack may follow. Troop weight than their brother fatter, you can still win, just gotta be. You're gonna be eaten by a coyote, run little one, though the pack may follow. Troop weight than their brother fatter, you can still win, just gotta be. You can still win, just gotta be. Oh, the air is thick, kinda makes me sick. Can I give CPR when I'm suffocating? And the birds don't sing like the ones on screen. Have they really domesticated me? Just gotta be. Have they really domesticated? Just gotta be. Have they really domesticated?
What can be said safely is that hardship does not only damage, under the right conditions, and especially when a person makes real meaning of what happened, it can produce qualities an easier life never would have. Regret is the raw material these stories are built from. The same decision can sit at the center of a tale of ruin, replayed as proof of failure, or become the hinge of a tale of becoming, the hard lesson that made the rest possible. The facts are identical. What differs is the meaning assigned and the chapter the teller chooses to stand in. The way out of a regret is often to keep writing past the worst page and to ask, without lying, what grew in that ground and who you became because of it. This is no license to invent a redemption that is not there, since a meaning built on falsehood is brittle and fails under weight. The skill is in finding the true growth and giving it its real weight, instead of letting the wound do all the talking, because most lives hold far more redemptive material than their owners admit. turning regret into wisdom. Everything in these pages converges on a single practical skill, the ability to process a regret completely and then set it down, keeping the wisdom and discarding the weight. It can be reduced to a short sequence of questions asked in order until the regret surrenders what it is actually holding. Start with the imagined better choice the regret is built on, since that is the wall holding the rest up. Was it truly available given what you knew and who you were at the time, or is it a phantom assembled from hindsight, from facts that did not exist when you chose? Many regrets collapse here, the moment you catch yourself condemning a past self for not knowing the unknowable. If the regret survives, ask the question the Stoics taught. Was the painful outcome within your control? Or did it ride on luck and timing and other people's choices? If you chose soundly and the result was not yours to command, there is no real failing. Only the friction of acting in an uncertain world, and the move is to grieve the luck and release the blame. If the regret clears both gates and points at a real failing that was yours to avoid, it has earned the right to teach you, and the work turns to extracting the lesson. Ask exactly what you would do differently and why, and keep asking until the answer is concrete enough to change a future action. It helps here to take the distanced view the researchers recommend, watching the scene from a step outside it rather than reliving it from within, because the calm observer can read the lesson that the flooded participant cannot. This is reflection, and it has a flaw. The moment you can state the lesson plainly and find that more thinking adds nothing, the useful part is over and everything past it is the second arrow. Name the lesson, declare the account settled, and turn forward, because rumination feeds on the sense that the books are still open when they have been closed for a while. Then forgive the self who erred and carry the lesson forward as the only thing worth carrying. The past stays where it is, beyond editing. The lesson is portable. It is yours to spend on every choice still ahead. This is what it means to say that all we keep is the wisdom we draw from experience. The events themselves slip permanently into a past we cannot reach, and the imagined better timeline never existed and never will. The understanding they yield between them is alive and useful, the compressed inheritance of everything you have lived through, and it exists to guide the one thing still in your hands, which is what you do next. The past is gone, not hidden, not retrievable, not waiting to be edited, but gone in the strict sense that no action available now can reach it. What remains, the only thing that ever remains, is the wisdom you draw out of it, and that wisdom travels forward into every decision you have not made yet. And when fear rises at the next decision, wearing the face of a regret you have not earned, remember that the self who gets the last word, the one looking back from the end, forgives a brave failure long before it forgives a careful retreat. Understand your life backward. You have no choice in that. Then turn and live it forward, which is the only direction it was ever going. The doors behind you are shut. What you learned while they stood open is in your hands, and everything still yours to choose is ahead.
Rain on my window, tapping like your red heel time. Rain on my window, tapping like your red heel time. I open up to shadows, just that hell on 47 line. Message reads, stop.